Every year, hundreds of millions of dollars sit unclaimed in county offices and court registries across the United States. This is real money. It belongs to real people, and most of them have no idea it even exists. It's called surplus funds, and if you or someone you know has ever lost a property to foreclosure, there is a chance that money is sitting in a government account right now, waiting to be claimed. This is not a loophole. It's not a scam. It's a legally created fund that exists simply because of how the foreclosure process works. Let's break down exactly what surplus funds are, how they're created, who has the right to claim them, and what happens if nobody does claim that money. Let's start with the basics. When a property goes through foreclosure, whether it's a mortgage foreclosure or a tax foreclosure, the property is eventually sold. That sale might happen at a public auction, a sheriff's sale, or through some other court-supervised process, depending on the state. Now here's the key. The purpose of that sale is to pay off the debt, the mortgage balance, the delinquent taxes, the liens, whatever triggered the foreclosure in the first place. But typically, the property sells for more than what was owed. When that happens, the difference, which is the amount left over after the debts are satisfied, is called the surplus. Some jurisdictions call it excess proceeds, overbid funds, or overage. The name changes depending on where you are, but the concept is the same. The surplus doesn't belong to the county. It doesn't belong to the bank. It doesn't belong to the buyer at auction. It belongs to the former property owner, or, in some cases, to other parties who had a legal interest in the property, like junior lien holders. And that's where things start to get interesting. To understand why surplus funds exist, you need to understand how foreclosure auctions work at a basic level. Let's say a homeowner owes $120,000 on their mortgage. They fall behind on payments. The lender initiates foreclosure. The property goes to auction. At the auction, someone bids $185,000 for the property. The first $120,000 goes to pay off the mortgage. After that, any other recorded liens or obligations against the property may be paid. Things like second mortgages, judgment liens, or homeowner association dues. Let's say those additional obligations total $15,000. That leaves $50,000. That $50,000 is the surplus. Now, in a tax foreclosure, the math works similarly, but the numbers are often different. A county might foreclose on a property for $8,000 in unpaid property taxes. The property sells at auction for $95,000. After the taxes and any applicable fees are paid, there could be tens of thousands of dollars left over. In both cases, the surplus doesn't just vanish. It's held, typically by the court, the county, or a designated government office, until someone with a legal right to those funds files a claim. This is the part most people miss. The money doesn't come to you automatically. You have to know it exists, and you have to take action to claim it. This is one of the most important questions in the entire process, and the answer depends heavily on your state and local laws. But in general terms, here's the priority structure most jurisdictions follow. First in line is typically the former property owner, the person or entity who held title to the property at the time of the foreclosure. If the surplus remains after all superior liens are paid, this person usually has the primary right to claim what's left. Next in line are junior lien holders. These are parties who had a recorded financial interest in the property that was wiped out by the foreclosure. Think second mortgage holders, contractors with mechanics liens, or creditors with judgment liens. If the former owner doesn't claim the funds, or if their claim is satisfied, junior lien holders may have a right to whatever remains. In some cases, heirs or estate representatives can also file a claim. For instance, if the former owner has passed away and the surplus becomes part of their estate. Here's what's critical to understand. The right to surplus funds is not automatic, and it is not permanent. Most jurisdictions impose a deadline for filing a claim. That deadline might be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or something else entirely, depending on where the property was located and what type of foreclosure occurred. Miss that deadline, and the funds may be forfeited, often absorbed into the county's general fund. This is why awareness matters so much. People lose money they're legally entitled to, not because someone took it from them, but because they simply didn't know it was there. Now let's talk about what it actually looks like to recover surplus funds. The specific steps, forms, and requirements vary significantly from state to state, county to county, and even between different types of foreclosure within the same jurisdiction. What follows is a general overview. It is not legal advice, and it should not be treated as a substitute for consulting with a licensed attorney in your area. With that said, here's the typical flow. Step 1 is identifying that surplus funds exist. This might involve searching court records, county treasurer websites, auction results, or published notices. Some counties maintain public lists of surplus funds available for claim. Others require you to dig deeper. Step 2 is determining your eligibility. You need to establish that you have a legal right to those funds. That usually means proving you are the owner of the property, a lien holder, or a legal heir. Step 3 is filing a claim. Most jurisdictions require you to submit a formal written claim, often accompanied by documentation, things like proof of identity, proof of ownership, copies of recorded liens, or probate documents if you're claiming as an heir. Step 4 is the review and approval process. The court or county office reviews the claim, may notify other potential claimants, and eventually issues an order approving or denying the disbursement. Step 5 is receiving the funds. If approved, the surplus is paid out, usually by check or wire transfer, to the rightful claimant. The timeline for this entire process can range from a few weeks to several months, depending on the jurisdiction, the complexity of the claim, and whether anyone contests it. There are a few common misconceptions about surplus funds that trip people up. The first misconception is that the government will notify you. In some states, the county or court is required to make a reasonable effort to contact the former owner. But reasonable effort can mean a single letter mailed to the last known address, the same address that was just foreclosed on. If you've moved, if your mail wasn't forwarded, if you didn't open the letter because you assumed it was another collection notice, you may never see that notification. The second misconception is that surplus funds only come from mortgage foreclosures. They don't. Tax foreclosures, HOA foreclosures, and other types of forced sales can all generate surplus funds. In fact, tax foreclosure surplus is one of the most commonly overlooked categories because the original tax debt is often small relative to the property's market value. The third misconception is that if you didn't fight the foreclosure, you lost your right to the surplus. That's generally not true. The surplus exists precisely because the sale generated more than was needed to resolve the debt. Your right to those excess funds is typically separate from the foreclosure itself. The fourth misconception is that you need to hire someone to recover surplus funds. You don't necessarily need to. Many people file claims on their own, especially when the process in their county is straightforward. That said, the process can be confusing, and in some jurisdictions it involves court filings, legal motions, and procedural rules that are difficult to navigate without professional help. Whether you hire an attorney or a licensed recovery agent is a personal decision that depends on the complexity of your situation and the amount of money at stake. Let's walk through a scenario to make this concrete. Maria owns a home in a mid-size county. She falls behind on her property taxes, about $6,500 in total. The county initiates a tax foreclosure, and the property is sold at a public auction for $142,000. After the delinquent taxes, penalties, interest, and administrative fees are paid, let's say that totals $9,200. There is $132,800 remaining. That $132,800 is the surplus. It's being held by the county. Maria moved to another city after the foreclosure. She never received a notification letter. She assumed she lost everything when the house was sold. 2 years later, a friend mentions surplus funds to her. Maria searches the county's records online and finds her name on a list of unclaimed surplus funds. She contacts the county office, fills out the required claim form, provides her identification and proof that she was the former owner, and submits the paperwork. 8 weeks later, she receives a check for $132,800. This is not a fantasy. Scenarios like this happen across the country. The only variable is whether people know to look. Foreclosure is not always the end of the financial story. Sometimes, there is money on the other side. Money that belongs to you by law. Money that's sitting in a government account, and money that will stay there until someone claims it. Surplus funds exist because the system generates them, but the system does not always do a good job of returning them. That responsibility falls on you. Know your rights, search the records, file the claim. And don't let money that belongs to you disappear because nobody told you it was there. If this video helped you understand surplus funds recovery, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because the biggest risk in this process isn't the paperwork. It's not knowing the process exists at all.